the 40th year of the life of the Rasul. So when Muhammad ibn Abdullah reached 40 years of age, and he was in the Ghar of Hira, some miles away from the hustle and bustle of the city of Mecca. There he used to meditate. The scholars say yatahannaf. They don't exactly know the method, but the Abrahamic system of worship. So he is there contemplating, meditating, worshipping, and he notices someone else in the room, in the cave. And normally when someone new comes into the cave, or when you're sitting and someone comes in your presence, the normal code is to say Assalamu alaikum, or hi, or how are you, or this one didn't. He just says Iqra. So the Rasul said, at this stage he is just Muhammad ibn Abdullah. So he said, Ma ana biqari. I am not literate. I don't know how to read and write. Some scholars deduce that he must have been shown a parchment, an article to read. So subsequently he says, Ma ana biqari. I am not learned. I can't read or write. So then he says, the person grabbed me, squeezed me until I could bear it no more, and then released me again and said, Iqra, read. So now bewildered, understand this cave is isolated, alone in the middle of nowhere. So now bewildered, he says, Ma ana biqari. I am not learned. I don't know how to read. So he says, he grabbed me again, squeezed me a second time until I could bear it no more, and then released me and commanded, Iqra. So I said, Ma ana biqari. I can't read. So he squeezed me again until I could bear it no more, then released me and said, Iqra. Bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. Read, recite, proclaim in the name of your Lord who created. خَلَقَ الْإِنسَانَ مِنْ عَلَقٍ. Created man from a clot-like substance. اقرأ, read. وَرَبُّكَ الْأَكْرَمِ. And your Lord is bountiful. الَّذِي عَلَّمَ بِالْقَلَمِ. The one who taught man with the pen. عَلَّمَ الْإِنسَانَ مَا لَمْ يَعْلَمْ. Taught him what he knew not. And as he uttered it, the man disappeared. So it is an extraordinary experience. This is not the days of Hollywood where you're exposed to fantasy. This is a person in the desert. Life is pretty bland. So the Rasul, bewildered, gathered his belongings and rushed out of the cave, and Subhan al-Khaliq. He says the same person is there, but now in his actual angel form, sitting on a throne, covering the expanse of the horizon. And this is Jibreel. He says he has 600 wings. Each wing covers the horizon. The Quran describes him, ذي قوة عند ذي العرش مكين مطاع ثم أمين. The mighty Jibreel, seated near the throne of Allah Rabbul Izzah, obedient and then trustworthy. Jibreel. So Jibreel is sitting on his throne, in covering the heavens, and Muhammad sallallahu ala Muhammad looks up at him, and Jibreel says, I am Jibreel, and you are the messenger of Allah. So the Rasul is bewildered. He looks away and Jibreel is there, and again he says, I am Jibreel, and you are the messenger of Allah. So the Rasul looks away and again he is there. I am Jibreel and you are the messenger of Allah. So he's bewildered and he rushes down, sliding down the slopes of the mountain, and to his bewilderment the rocks start to say, Assalamu alayka ya Rasulullah. It is as though creation has held its silence, and now after 600 and more years a prophet has finally come, and this is the seal of prophethood, after whom will be no more. It is as though they're saying, Ya Rab, give us permission to say salam to the Rasul. So he went home nervous, anxious, afraid, bewildered, and he says, Zammiluni, Zammiluni, Dathiruni, Dathiruni, cover me, wrap me up, cloak me, conceal me. So he's there under the covers until the emotions subside, and he explains to our mother Khadijah Kubra what happened, and she confesses her trust in him and goes and speaks to Waraq ibn Nawfal, and subsequently comes back and comforts him. Then revelation stopped for some time, and one day he sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and he's doubting, what has happened to me? Am I possessed? Is there a jinn? What's going on? And he says, I was walking in the streets, and he looks up, and there he is again, Jibreel. And it is such an overwhelming feeling that it caused the Prophet to kneel. He got on his knee, like make them drop. And he rushed back home and he said, Zammiluni, Zammiluni, Dathiru, cover me, cover me. And now he is covered, and Khadija goes out again, radiallahu anha, and now Jibreel comes again. And this time with the revelations, Ya ayyuhal muddathir, qum fa'anzir, wa rabbaka fakabbir, wa thiyabaka fatahhir. O you who are covered, get up and start warning. Qum fa'anzir. And he got up and started to warn, and started to teach, and started to preach. And for the next 23 years his night and day was the same. And don't think that the preaching was easy. His message at a time where there are 360 gods in the Kaaba. How many? 360 gods in the Kaaba, idols in the Kaaba. His message is La ilaha illallah. None of these are correct, only one Allah. Can you imagine coming to an Arab race and telling them, all this is wrong, Allah alone is Lord? And so as soon as he started to preach, first few years was quiet, it was quiet preaching. Once Tawheed became more insistent, the trouble started. They say we saw him in the days of Hajj, going from tent to tent, teaching people, worship Allah, you will be successful. And all the while there's someone following him, pelting stones at him, stop preaching, stop preaching. It would hit his face and his mouth. And they say his mouth was bleeding, so he washed the blood out and continued preaching. You would be surprised to know that the same person pelting him was his own uncle Abu Lahab. So they strangled him, to the point where he used to fall unconscious. They chucked dirt on him. They isolated and segregated him, sanctioned him, put him there where they had no food, to the extent that they used to eat leaves of trees and skins of the dead animals. So this continued for 13 long years in Mecca. Eventually they decided, we will assassinate him. Allah saved him. He came to Medina al-Munawwara, and night and day he is in the preaching and the propagating and promoting of the religion of Allah. And slowly the numbers started to grow. Islam became manifest. The light started to shine. People turned to Islam.